to my people who are on the bike a lot, so triathletes, cyclists. So once in a while I'll get a client who comes into me with hand tightness, okay? And obviously cyclists are using their whole bodies, but you're also using your hands. This is not something that people who cycle actually, in my line of command, complain about a lot. They come to me for other things, but once in a while there's a persnickety issue where their hand keeps getting tight and they don't know why, so they really want me to work on their hand, which I do to a certain extent, but I want to kind of open the topic a little bit because there could be other things going on up into the arm, elbow, and shoulder. So what I find is, yes, cyclists are leaning on their hands a lot. They're putting their weight on the handlebars. They're also pulling up on the handlebars when they're working hard and standing up. So there's a lot of work going on in the hands. But there are further things going on which actually show up in the lats sometimes. We've talked before in some of my videos and my posts about lat tightness. So when your lats are tight, oftentimes it's because they're sticking. Okay, they're sticking to the tissue around them. They're sticking to the other muscles here, which would be your serratus anterior, your subscapularis. Some of you who work with therapists or who are professional know some of these muscles because you've talked about them before with people that you've worked with. So sometimes you actually have posterior shoulder sticking, and that's creating an issue where your arm, your elbow, your wrist, and hand are not getting the trunk support that they need, right? Because that actually, when you're on the bike and you're kind of pulling back slightly to keep yourself stable, this is happening. We don't think about it on the bike a lot, but when we're doing that, we need our lats to be able to fire really well. We need our subscapularis and our armpit to be able to support our shoulder and our arm really well. And if those muscles are super fatigued, they haven't been foam rolled, they haven't been worked on by a therapist, they haven't been stretched, then chances are it's making the smaller muscles of your arm have to work harder to hold you on the bike and to keep you stable and secure, right? Imagine that if these big muscles are not supporting you, connecting the trunk to the arms to the bike, right? You need these big muscles to support you. If they're not doing it, then something else has to take over. Something else has to step up, right? And a lot of times that's the forearm, the grip of the hand. We might be pulling ourselves on the handlebars a little more with our hand control, our elbow, our biceps, right? Without locking those lats in more because they're not at their optimum, right? So we need to be able to release those lats. I do have some exercises for that. Mostly I use foam rolling and some hand massage on myself for that, and I teach my clients that as well. So I will put a reel or a live out tomorrow talking about the lats and how we can get them to stop sticking to the rib cage, to the serratus anterior, and maybe even to the subscap if you can get your hands in there yourself. So that's one area. The second area, obviously forearm, right? The forearm gets really tight. So even if you're feeling tightness in your hand, the bulky parts of the muscles that go to the hand are mostly in the forearm, especially the extensors here. I find these get fatigued a lot more than we know. The flexors do as well on this side of the forearm, but the extensors are actually really sticky and stuck on a lot of my cyclist clients. So I will actually go through and strip these muscles with my gua sha tool that you've seen in some of my videos. And I'll go through here. This is a little muscle that very few people actually talk about called anconeus. It literally is underneath my 3 fingers right here. It's between this bone, this really pointy bone, your elbow, and this smaller pointy bone right here. That little tiny ravine here that most people don't even know that's there. It's like where you hit your funny bone, which is really a nerve that you hit. But we're not going to be working on the nerve. We're just going to work on the anconeus. So there's just this little tiny muscle here. If you're having hand tightness, you can actually get your fingers in here. And you see I'm actually going over my anconeus. So this is a really tiny muscle, but it assists the group of the triceps, which compared to anconeus, the triceps are huge, right? So this little tiny muscle is doing its darndest to support this kind of movement, right? Which we do on the bike a lot because we're pushing ourselves up, we're stabilizing ourselves, right? So you can imagine if you have tricep fatigue, if this tricep tendon is tight on you, because you're on the bike a lot, or because you also are an office worker, right? So you're using a mouse a lot. I'll find this office workers who are triathletes or cyclists will actually have quite a bit of sticking in this tendon in the tricep. So if this is happening and you've got your lat sticking, then your anconeus is obviously going to be overworked. This actually, releasing this by itself is kind of like a really quick bang for your buck if you're going for some forearm opening and some hand opening. So if you have any questions about this stuff, this is a lot of information. Please write me a message here on the chat. Totally acceptable. You can message me on Instagram. Let's talk about it. Let's get more information, because there's things that you can do on a regular basis to get rid of this stuff yourself, or you can talk to your massage therapist if you're not my client, and you can get them to handle this stuff for you. You can even mention some of the muscles that we talk about in the videos. So chime in tomorrow. I will have a live or a reel talking about foam rolling the lat group, and maybe even getting a little bit in with our own personal handwork into the posterior axillary fold. All right, thanks for chiming in. This is Raise the Bar Wellness. Hope you have a great night.